I'll open it. Good evening. My name is Chris Lynch. Tonight we're starting with a couple of public hearings. I declare these public hearings open.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the Shimmick Elementary School playground renovation project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on March 28th, 2017. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on March 29th, 2017. The district will receive bids on this project at 2:30 p.m. April 13, 2017 at the physical plant located at 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa, 52246. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on March 29th of 2017. Are there any questions from the board?
Yes. Who is the district ADA compliance officer or regulator or czar? Who's in charge of that?
That's one of the responsibilities that Kingsley has.
Okay. And has Kingsley had a chance to review these and
I believe he has, yes.
okay, excellent.
And just to clarify for the board and the public, this is with respect to the demolition of the playground. So that's what the hearing's posted for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and just for clarification as well, the plans for the Shimmick Playground that was approved at the last meeting, it's the plans are in the last pages of the handout from the attachment in the packet. I'd gotten that question from the public.
It should be, yes, sir. I'd have to look at them again, but I believe they were.
Well, yeah, it was the ones that had the fish in the one structure and.
Yes, that's
and,
correct.
Okay, and all of.
Again, Director, I'm just going to remind that the hearing is on the demolition of the playground.
Right.
Yeah.
And just one more question, please. In the playground handbook that was revised before this, all of the protocols and things in there are going to be followed in the construction of this one
Yeah.
and everything else going forward.
You're referring to page 9 of the handbook, and I reread it again today, and I recertified that all the items had been complied with.
Okay, very good.
Other questions from the board?
Well, I do. I guess I'm not sure. You know, Chris is saying it's just about the demolition, but I'm not. It says just the proposed plans and specifications for the playground renovation project. So what exactly is the?
These plans are for the demolition of the existing wooden structure, and then to prepare the site for the new structures.
But to prepare the site. Well, I mean, I had some questions that were given to me by a member of the public in case that person wasn't here. I don't see that person here. I'll just read them, and you know, if you think they're relevant, you can take a shot at them. And I do think some of them have to do with at least the location of the site. A person asked, is the 10-plex really needed? Is it in the best interest of our teachers and students to use it? They will have to swap classrooms mid-year, which means they have to move their whole classroom 3 times in one school year. The proposed location of the 10-plex is quite far from the school, which would require students to dress for the weather every time they need to go to the building and back. How much time every day will be spent bundling up kids to run for the school and back for specials, lunch, school activities? It looks like the 10-plex will only save about $175,000 if I'm looking at the correct info. After the cost of moving the 10-plex to Shimmick, removing the trees, leveling the ground, preparing it for playground surfacing, leveling the old playground and building a road down to the site to get it there, the cost to run electricity and water, et cetera, how much are we really saving? Is it worth all the work that it requires? Where would the money for this project come from? Should we be committing this much money now for a plan that's 3 years out and is only needed because of the one year time the 10-plex will be there? The new playground space has the students locked into a small area that lacks any green space to run around and explore. I've been told they will have access to the soccer field, but it's just flat grass with no shade. The current landscape includes a 7-tree forest, hills to climb and roll down, plenty of room to spread out. They keep saying the new site has a bigger footprint than the old, but we would be stuck in that footprint. It is locked in on all sides.
And the question on demolition is what?
Say again?
What's the question on demolition?
Well, as far as the location, if it's preparing the new site, I think the person has an issue with the location being too far. and not being accessible to green space is the way I'm reading it, and wondering if the cost of it
Yeah, well,
is justified.
there's a lot of questions in that,
Yeah,
but with respect to that, we looked that site over pretty carefully, and we really think that's the only place the Tenplex will go and work and function with the school. It will require a couple of ramps to get to it from the building. It will require kids to go outside to get into the Tenplex, but the Tenplex will have its own restroom facility. It has worked at Twain, it worked at Lucas, it worked at Coralville Central. The staff that used it, I got absolutely no complaints about students having to move between two buildings. It seems to work quite well. And I can't put a price on safety because we're taking kids out of a construction site and putting them in a safe place. You can't put a dollar value on that.
Well, I think the other question I've heard at least is, why did we change from a 2-summer plan to a 1-year plan with the Tenplex?
Again, I think if we did it over 2 summers, it was also going to go through the entire school year. It wasn't just the summertime. It would have went through the entire year plus 2 summers. So it would have put children in harm's way much more than we're going to do with the Tenplex. It just is a much safer, much smarter way to do a construction project.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Any questions from the public?
Good evening. I'm Harry Olmsted. I'm an advocate for persons with disabilities, and I'd like to read a statement, and it contains questions, if I may. I want to talk to you this evening about equity. Having served on the school board equity committee for 4 years, I have a little knowledge about that here in our district. To me, equity means diversity and inclusion, both of which will be missing at Chimmick Elementary School playground next fall. And how many other district playgrounds in our district are the same? Why is this? Because we have children that have notable differences, that cannot fully explore the new equipment that you approved, in spite of parent and schools, PTO presidents' recommendations to you. Children with disabilities all too often are neglected in social settings, but here was a chance for the school district to give them the opportunity for inclusion and offer the diversity of our school district desires. How many of our school playgrounds just sneak by like this with minimal adaptive play equipment that the American Disabilities Act required? Why then didn't you agree with the parents? Was it cost, or your staff and board just don't care? This is just another example how this school district appreciates children with disability. Other examples is the inclusion rooms, the disproportionality that we've seen in special education. What else can we expect from staff and our school board as it pertains to children with special needs? Thank you.
Is there a specific question in there, Harry?
Pardon me?
Do you have a specific question?
Well, I think that what we're talking about is you had parents appear before you took the vote, and you totally ignored what they had to say to you.
Okay, I'll answer that question. So the PTO voted to support what was approved.
I'm sorry?
The PTO voted to support the option that was approved.
Okay. I've been in touch with the Access Board in Washington, D.C., and there are certain recommendations they have made. One of them has to do with the ground filling that you're going to use needs to be cleaned on a daily basis, and I highly doubt that that's going to happen. I'll be happy to pass that report on to Steve and Ben, and I just wish we'd look at adaptive equipment and not just a piece of it to meet the ADA guidelines. We need to exceed those guidelines.
Great. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you.
Further questions from the public? All right, we'll move on to the next one. Move on to the hearing on the certified budget.
Yes. Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the district's proposed fiscal year 2018 certified budget and setting the tax rate. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on March 28, 2017. Notice of public hearing was published in Iowa City Press Citizen on March 30th, 2017. Are there any questions from the board related to the certified budget and setting the tax rate?
It's on our agenda tonight, too,
Oh,
so.
right. Are there any questions from the public? Okay,
All right, thank you. I declare these public hearings closed. Welcome to the Iowa City Community School Board meeting on Tuesday, April 11th. I want to thank those in the audience and those on TV for taking an interest in our district business. My name's Chris Lynch. I call this meeting to order. I want to start tonight by introducing those at the table with me. To my right is Superintendent Steve Murley, then Directors Lori Rowland, Phil Hemingway, Brian Kirschling, Tasha Deloche, Paul Rosler, Chris Liebig, and Recording Secretary Kim Colvin. The public is reminded if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form found at the table in the lobby and turn it in. During community comments, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting during the community comment section of the agenda. And first up tonight is our student representatives. Do we have City High, Lucy and Lucy?
Pretty sure Lucy is defending City High's honor on the tennis court right at this moment.
On what? Tennis court? Well, that sounds pretty important, so good luck to Lucy tonight. West High, Michael?
Sorry. Thanks. Good evening. My name is Michael, and I'm the West High representative. This past weekend at West, there was over 200 members of the cast and crew for West Spring musical Les Mis. The production was a huge success and was seen by over 2,000 people during its run last Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. All-State Jazz Band was this past weekend. Ned Furlong was selected on piano, Junior Daniel Burgess was selected on guitar, and Sean Chi was selected as an alternate on the vibraphone. West Jazz Band placed 7th overall in the championships. West High's robotics team, led by social studies teacher Dominic Iannone and junior Kushi Kapoor, made it to the elimination rounds in the 72-team competition at the state robotics tournament. The team made it to the finals for their division, but they came just short of qualifying for the World Championship. West High also sent 2 teams to the Science Olympia this past month, comprising of 29 students. We placed 4th and 12th overall and took home a total of 11 medals. In sports news, just before spring break, the boys basketball team won the 4A state championship, and more recently, at the Women of Troy track meet, senior Gabby Skopek broke her meet record in the 3,000 meters, and senior Valerie Welch broke her own record in the 100-meter hurdles with a time of 14.73 seconds, lowering her own meet record from the previous year. West High's Student Senate had its second annual Read to Lead book drive this past month, and we added a new element to the initiative this year. We actually had student senators go out to 4 West Side elementary schools, and we had about 20 students read to kindergarten students. Lastly, the West High's newspaper, the West Side Story, was honored at the National Journalism Convention in Seattle. They were honored with as a Pacemaker finalist. For those of you who don't know, the Pacemaker is the most prestigious award given to high school publications, and the Iowa High School Press Association named 6 West High students out of the 35 finalists as emerging journalists. Finally, Principal Dr. Schultz, members of the West High administrative team, and members of the Go Bond Committee will be on hand on Monday, April 24th at 7 p.m. to discuss West High's future as we approach our 50th anniversary next year. Thank you.
Michael, before you leave, I know you're not going to toot your own horn, but might you share just a little bit about your trip to Washington, D.C. with the board?
Thank you. Yeah, so the week after spring break, I attended the United States Senate Youth Program, which is a 55-year-old program that is funded by the Hearst Corporation. In addition to the $10,000 scholarship, I got to meet several of the nation's most prominent leaders, including the Secretary of the State, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, as well as the President and Vice President of the United States. So it was a very rewarding experience, and I have Mr. Schutt to thank for sparking my interest in government and West High in general. So thank you so much.
Very exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Michael. Do we have Tate, Dalen? All right, next item on the agenda is the ICA update. Brady?
President Lynch, Vice President Deloach, Superintendent Murley, thanks. We did not stage that at all either. I appreciate the prompt, though, Superintendent. Directors, it's nice to be here tonight. It seems like it's been a while since I was before all of you. I'd like to just recognize some of our members who attended the Iowa State Education Delegate Assembly, which is one of our leadership programs that we do. We had Danelle Kanaki, Robin Fields, Monique Kottman, Nathan Kelly, and Beth Hieronymus were in attendance there. In addition, Nathan Kelly and Monique Kottman and Mitch Gross, my co-president, were all chosen to be a part of a Young Leaders Institute in Orlando, which was quite a recognition for them. And Monique was just chosen to be our new elementary representative on our executive board. So if you know Monique, she's one of our young superstars in the organization. So one of the things that they came back and told me is that people from all over say to them, gosh, look at what's going on in Iowa, and how are you doing? And it's going to be, and we say, well, yeah, it's been a challenge, but we have a wonderful relationship with our board and with our administrative teams. And so I want to say, on behalf of all of our organization, just thank you all for the relationship that we've built and for the work that we do together. President Lynch, I thought you hit it on the head with your editorial about the work that we do, especially on the insurance committee. It's a nice example. Director Elsler's on there with me. I really look forward to keeping that work going. So in that spirit, we have our Iowa City Education Banquet and Awards Assembly on May 3rd, which is Wednesday, and I'd like to just extend our cordial invitation to you and a guest to come to that banquet. It is at the Northridge Pavilion. We'll send out information as well. But it is the same night as the Silver Salute, so we're sort of billing that as like a perfect education night for you. The Silver Salute's a little bit before ours, and then we're the fun follow-up to the Silver Salute. So 5:30 at the Northridge Pavilion. We'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Brady. Next item on the agenda is community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You're reminded to give your name, address, and the topic you wish to speak. During community comments, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and be limited to 4 minutes per speaker. Initial community comment, to the extent necessary, shall be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment shall take place at the end of the meeting. To the extent you are commenting on items not on our posted agenda, the board may ask follow-up questions of items, but cannot speak to items that are not posted on our board agenda. And we're basically prohibited by Iowa open meeting laws from responding to questions or speakers regarding substantive discussions regarding non-agenda items. First up tonight is Julie Van Dyke, and on deck will be Amy Johnson.
So the special education survey was sent out to parents and was completed in February, and it's April 11th. And the only reason that I can see personally that it's even on the agenda tonight was because I begged for it to be. How long were you going to let it go? Out of 1,527 invites, it isn't clear, you don't specify whether that's for both parents of one child or any clarification there. You had 321 responses. 21% is all you got. You've got a communication problem, but I think you know that. You've got a credibility problem. You had the state come in and apparently, from what I saw, validate that there's a culture of retaliation here. Well, the parents are feeling it if you're only getting 21% response. I know what you're going to do later. You're going to sit here and you're going to have a lovely report that tells you all of the great numbers that are on here, and you're going to pat yourselves on the back and tell everybody what a great job they're doing. But you know what? Those numbers don't mean anything. Those numbers don't mean anything, because if there's one parent in this district that has a problem with those seclusion rooms, you're not hearing it. And it's a lot more than that. Because, you know, I go through here and I'm looking at the numbers and the percentages. Relevant documents were provided. Let's see, I was provided with relevant documents before my child's individualized education IEP meeting. 31% of parents that responded to this didn't get the documents they needed before their own meeting that determines sometimes what that child will actually get for the next 2 to 3 years. 31% didn't get the documents they needed. It's one after another here. Before you sit up here later and pat yourselves on the back for your 67% positive rating and the quality of special education support from the survey, that's not 67% of the parents in the district that have kids in special ed that think that. That's 67% of your 21% response. Everybody else is a no. Because if they thought they were getting great service, don't you think they'd let you know? I'm looking at this and it's really frightening to me. I filled out this survey myself, and you haven't answered several of my questions. You've got a culture of retaliation, in my opinion, and many others here, and people are afraid to stand up for what their kids need because they're afraid that their kids will be retaliated against in school, or that they will be. I know I feel that. I know other parents that feel that. And yet, you can't even get us the documents ahead of time. My kids, let's see, we had 11 hours of IEP meetings, and nothing moved to get my child the accommodations or even the testing that we asked for. After he was tested by the CDD at UIHC, and they said he had essentially a writing disability. That was in April of 2016. We were still waiting for the testing. We finally got it. We finally heard about it. Just heard about it in the last meeting. The only reason I know that the last meeting went well, in my opinion, is because we finally had to ask near the head of the Grantwood AEA to come in and actually have our IEP meeting with us. If that's what it takes, oh my God, 21% in the seclusion rooms in here? The question that you asked about that, I hope you're sending all of the responses to the Grantwood AEA, and I will ask them to ask for all of the verbal responses that you're not including in here, because you've still got a huge problem in special ed in this district, and all you're going to do tonight is pat yourselves on the back for your good numbers that are only 21% of everybody asked.
Thanks, Julie. Amy?
I am here talking to you about my support for the General Obligation Bond, or GO bond, as it's also commonly known. I am speaking to you in two capacities, one as a parent and one as a committee member for the One Community, One Bond committee that has been formed to help educate the community, students, parents, teachers, business owners, everyone in the district about what the bond will provide, what it can provide for our schools, what it can provide for our economic stability, and what it can provide for each individual student who will be affected. Our job is also to get the vote out and get people to come out and vote on September 12th in favor of the bond. But for me personally, my students, I have two kids at Garner Elementary. They are going to benefit from the bond, both through the additions at North Central eventually and the athletic fields at Liberty High School. But in general, our whole community is going to benefit. We're going to benefit from 100% air conditioning, which is huge. We're also going to benefit from added security, added ADA compliance, upgrades to buildings, non-crowded classrooms, less temporaries. There's so many benefits to every student across this district that it is imperative that we pass this initiative. One other thing to keep in mind is that once this initiative is passed, I think one other huge thing will come out of this that nobody's talking about. And the thing that I think that will come out of it is that this community. We are a community of people. There are 5 towns or townships that represent us, and we're very separated. We're very separated, and we have been since I moved here 15 years ago. So I think that getting this passed, working together as a group and working together as a community will bring everybody together to help move forward. And eventually we can start having conversations in this building and in these meetings about teacher pay, teacher education, continued education. How do we recruit the best teachers? How do we set the best curriculum? How do we provide students the things that they need? And we're not talking about facilities anymore. Or at least we're up to speed on our facilities and we can have minor conversations about them as they progress. But in the 10 years that I've been participating in these meetings, every single conversation revolves around the facilities master plan, the lack of the facilities master plan at one point, and all buildings and everything else. And I think it's time that we work together to get this accomplished so that we can start talking about other things more frequently. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Next item on the agenda is business consent agenda.
I'd just like to, well, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I'd like to pull 7, 9, and 10 from the consent agenda.
Checking 7's higher, lead higher, 19 is the contract for summer,
Right, summer,
and 10 is
summer.
95%.
Right.
Yep. Entertain a motion?
I move that we approve the business consent agenda items absent items 7, 9, and 10 as pulled by Director Hemingway.
Second.
Out of the bills?
Yes, and I want to thank Les and the business department for allowing me an extra day. I attended the FFA Leadership Convention on Monday, and they let me inspect the books today. Everything, I had some questions, they were answered. We had some a carnivorous plant collection, and I don't know if we're getting a twofer on that with IPM. But we also had some mouse damage in our chiller, which shows us the importance of not only keeping our buildings rodent-free, but also our exterior equipment and things that way. So we're working on those things and that. But yeah, we everything looked in order, and all questions that I had were answered. So
Great. Further comments? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim. Moving into board work, the first item is just an information. I want to congratulate Susie Bolton for winning the United Way Agency Director of the Year Award. And that was for her leadership and work on Healthy Kids School-Based Health Clinics, which is celebrating its 10-year milestone, and that's just been truly an outstanding agency and service for our kids. So thank you to the United Way, who's been a great partner, and thank you for Susie for her leadership. Any other questions on that? Next item is Director Liaison Reports, and that also is an information only. You can check the board docket for what people have been up to in terms of various meetings, if there's any conversation on that. We will move on to the GO bond language, and before I hand it off to Steve, there's a updated bond language attached. I'm going to suggest right out of the gate, we plan to approve this unless there's a real urgent need to do it tonight. We plan to approve it on the 25th because it really just came out today. I think in terms of improvements, it's taken some of the generic language and replaced it with some more actionable language on things we're actually doing, like getting air conditioning, ATA, stuff like that in there. It includes the facilities master plan reference, and then it also puts the projects in order. So, Steve, I don't know if I missed anything, but
Yeah, what I would add is that as we've been talking to people, both in the community and internally with stakeholders, we've received quite a bit of input regarding questions that have arisen regarding content of the language. So what you see is, I think, the fifth draft, as we've gone through it, should have our bond counsel with us in case you have any questions for her about the process in terms of complying with all relevant state requirements for the bond language itself. One of the issues that we will still have to address is length. One of the things we try to do is make sure that we work with Johnson County Auditor to ensure that the language is appropriate for the actual ballot itself. What we have right now, we think fits within the parameters that they're seeking. But again, if you've got questions for myself, for Craig, or for Bond Counsel Grobe, we'd be more than happy to answer those for you.
You just described that point, because if it gets too long, then the whole thing isn't on the ballot. And
Well, what we need to do is we need to make sure that it fits on the ballot. And as you know from voting, Auditor Weipert has two sides to work with. We think that there's plenty of room based on what we think will be on the ballot at that point in time, so we think we're all right, but certainly that's something we want to take into consideration is working with him on that.
I guess we talked about what changed, but what stayed the same is the dollar amount and all the projects, and it's really just getting more specific on.
Sure, one of the things that you see on there that's a little bit different, there was a question about how to order the projects. So if you're familiar with our the work that we've been doing on the facility master plan, you'll note that all of the projects are now listed in chronological order, alpha order on there. So we remind people to go through and look at that based on not just the listing if you're looking for it from an alphabetical standpoint, but you have to actually look at it on a longitudinal standpoint.
Further discussion?
I'd just like to say that I very much like the specificity of having air conditioning, ADA accessibility, art and music, gymnasium, lunchroom, classroom, safety and security. I think those are things that, regardless of the building, that we're striving for higher standards all across the district. And I think that I think that's an excellent addition to the bond language, which seemed to me fairly generic when we first got to take a look at. I think it might have been the second iteration or the first iteration.
And those issues did arise from community input as we went through the bond PR sessions.
And they're reflective of our thought
The last
exchange
work
and
session.
face-to-face community comments and so on and so forth.
I have a few questions. So is this order that these are ordered in, is this legally binding?
No, these were simply put in there on that order based on the current facilities master plan approved by the board.
Okay, so, so a constituent wouldn't be able to say if we changed the order, but you had it in that order on the ballot?
No,
You have to follow that?
You don't have to follow the order that's on the ballot. That was simply put in there so that people would be able to follow it in parallel with the documentation.
Okay, and then along those lines, which I think you already answered this, I see that Shimmick has moved up. I ordered the projects in order of year. Have we moved Shimmick to 2020? Because it's in the order prior to the 2021 projects, which it was prior to this, to my knowledge.
I will go back and double check and make sure that this is in the exact order. We've gone through this several times to make sure that it was, but I will go back and
Actually,
double
that's
check
a good that's a really good question because I know that we had moved Shimmick back in the batting order with as of January 31st. So I'm wondering if the bond language was, if you guys were starting the development process before that. Is that correct?
We'll go through and make sure this is aligned
you.
with it. You
Yeah,
look at
really
it so many
triple-
times, sometimes I think you
triple
might
check
miss
it
some of
that
that.
everything's on there.
And you said the
Quadruple.
order isn't binding, so.
The order
I
isn't
think,
binding, no. What we wanted to do is,
We
based
still
on
like to get it right, so.
feedback that we got from the general public as they're looking at the facility master plan, can they see that represented here?
Okay, and then my third question is, I've listened to the presentation several times now that's being given in the community, and there's a slide in there that specifically mentions preschool. I do not see preschool listed here.
When you look at, we're about 4 lines down in there, constructing additions to and/or remodeling, repairing, improving. That is subsumed within there. It's not listed separately. Certainly doesn't prevent us from doing it. From a specificity standpoint, there would be nothing that would prevent us from putting it in here so that there was more specificity.
I don't know that I have a strong opinion about it. I just see that science, music, and art are all listed, which is very specific. But preschool, which has an actual slide in the presentation, does not get listed here. So I think either the slide needs to be removed from the presentation, or perhaps it should be added here because I think it's misleading to the community.
Well, just a point of clarification, I don't disagree with you that I'd like maybe to see it added in here in the language, but the slide has been changed. So if you look at the website, it's been changed to flexibilities of classroom space.
Okay, so changed since last Tuesday. Thank you. That's the last I saw it. So do as you see fit for that then.
I'll just say I like the specifics, I like the changes that have been made, and looks good to me. And let's triple check it before the 25th. I'm in no rush myself, and the plan was to do it the 25th, so. Further discussion, we'll add this to the 25th agenda for approval. All right, next up is legislative update, Steve.
Yes, actually, I've got an update that's fresh off the press right now. One of the pieces of legislation that was in movement today, actually I haven't even had a chance to talk to the team about this because I got the update just before I came in here, is that it looks like the state legislature is going to take action to remove third grade retention and to take action to remove the mandate for summer school. The summer school retention, the feedback from legislators was that is a cost initiative because they say that they will not be able to fund it now, nor do they see any opportunity in the future to fund it based on some of the current projections. The retention issue is actually a philosophical one, according to several of the legislators who spoke on the floor today. And they do not feel any longer, at least from those that spoke, that retention is actually a solution for us as we look to increase literacy rates for students, that we actually need to focus more on prevention at earlier grade levels and not retention at third grade. So those are two that may by now already have been written and passed. If not, they presume could go through tomorrow. And then the last one that's probably of more interest perhaps to folks sitting to my left is it looks like elections are going to be combined beginning in November of 2019. So those of you that have terms that expire in 2019 rather than expiring in September, they will expire in November. We will then have our elections.
It's 2019, right?
2019, yes, not 17, 19.
Congratulations, everybody.
And obviously, we'll have to work with our county auditors on that because that'll combine us with municipal elections. So that, again, as I said, interests to some of you more than others.
Again, I just want to ask, because I kind of asked it once before, what is that going to do for our cost out of our general fund when it comes to?
That's a good question. We don't know that. It could be a plus or a minus. We bear a portion of combined elections. Depending on the cost of putting those elections into place, our costs could be higher or lower than they are right now separated.
So we've had one real discussion on this, right? And it was when we were looking at a special election. And if we didn't do a special election, it may have gone to the November election. And the history has been, it's been cost shared, like 50-50 or a third.
Right.
And if you followed that history, it'd be more expensive for us.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, there's nothing saying that we have to follow that history, but it's something that'll need to be negotiated with via the auditor's office with the other entities. But it's a watch out that if you just did that past practice, it would be more it'd be cheaper overall because there's one less election, but it'd be more expensive for us because it's a bigger election with more polling. And
right. What the legislators talked about was a couple of things. They talked about voter fatigue, asking people to come out twice as opposed to coming out once. They were hoping that by asking people to only come out once that we might drive up overall participation. Even with both of them combined, you'd see more people together. So that was one of the big reasons that they talked about that. The other one was in terms of from an operational efficiency standpoint, although the cost may be somewhat higher, in terms of recruiting poll workers and other things like that, they thought that only having one election would be more operationally efficient from an auditor standpoint too.
I'd just like to go on record saying that I have significant concerns about injecting national politics into school board elections. And additionally, I have significant concerns about areas in our district such as North Liberty, which is one auditor, one municipality, 2 school districts.
Correct.
You want to talk about helping poll workers? That's not going to help poll workers. So I'd like to see the solutions they plan to generate between now and 2019. I hope they're productive.
Anybody who's interested, there's a real good post that John Deeth wrote on the John Deeth blog about the logistical problems that they'll have to address if they do this. And he's made a real good case against it. I mean, I do think that it's probably going to result in higher turnout, and there's something to be said for higher turnout. And, you know, I come from a place where they were always on the same day as city elections. In fact, they were partisan. You know, people thought their school system was just as good as we think our school system is. So, but the actual work that's going to go into making it happen.
I would like to say that in regards to the first bit of news about third grade retention and summer school, this might be the first time that I personally agree with something that has come out of Des Moines in the last few months.
No, that's a major breakthrough. And Steve, I want to thank you and congratulate you, because I know you've spent a lot of time educating people in Des Moines on how retention doesn't work. And in fact, it's harmful, and, you know, there's just all sorts of research that says that. And sometimes you wonder if all the trips, you know, pay off, and this is a huge breakthrough, and obviously it paid off. So thank you for your advocacy and trying to teach people that. And I think it's a great segue, and I think we put on a future work session to work our legislative priorities for next year, because we need to get on going. And we were even talking about, you know, getting, you know, pre-K, incremental pre-K funding instead of retention, just because, as you just said, let's get proactive, not reactive.
Focus on prevention.
I just also, of course, I'm going to be cautionary. I don't want that to be a let up on our work towards that. I just think that that's really important, because
Absolutely.
sometimes when we see things like that come down the pipeline, we have this activity that happens where we're trying to, and I just really want us to still stay focused on that. That's still important. Maybe we're not retaining, but we still need to still keep that as a goal of our district, that we're still working towards that there's no let up on making sure that our kids are getting the best education. Not that it ever was, but there was some extra added pressure that we were worried about. There was some financial pressure. There was some additional pressures. I think that pressure should still be alive and well. Just the energy needs to change around it, but it's still important.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Amy and I were actually meeting earlier today talking about our assessment load on our younger students, how we could work to be more efficient with that, fewer assessments, better impact, more actionable data for staff. And we continue to plan for that and implement that with the understanding that that helps drive better instruction in our primary grades, and so we will continue to do that.
I just wanted to ask, I missed the March 31st legislative forum that we hold here. Was there good public turnout, or was it more just?
Here, there was a handful of people.
Because the one in February, there was about.
It was less. It declined.
So there's one more opportunity.
There is.
Left on April 28th at 4 p.m. here in this room to make sure that if you want to hear the words straight from the mouths of our representatives.
I will say that this year, because of the change in when pieces of legislation went through the process, we front-loaded. We had a lot more activity in January and February, so we had a lot higher turnout in January, February. In past years, March and April have been when the rubber hit the road, and so we had larger turnouts then. I think part of the challenge right now that we have is there are a lot of other issues in the state legislature right now, and so there hasn't been as much news for them to report nor us to
And really on the
provide
31st,
feedback.
they honestly want to hear from us, and we probably took 55 to 60 minutes because they had no new news, really. And they were just blunt with that. And they want to hear from us in terms of what we need and talking about the future. So I think we continue, you know, still talk about next legislative priorities and next session. And
Correct.
Probably wrap up this one.
And we did add the legislative priorities to the future June work session, so we can get a jump start on those, knowing that IASB will start asking for those early August, so we'll want to make sure we're ready to roll with that.
Well, great. That's great news. It's exciting. Further discussion?
Will our compensation be extended along with our terms?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, proportionally.
Proportionally commensurate?
You got that going for you.
They'll add another, let's see, so 48 months.
Or free football games.
There's always a silver lining.
Right. The next three items come from policy and governance, so ends policies, Brian?
Yeah, we've been hard at work. Some of this we've been working on actually since the beginning of the school year, believe it or not. First item, item 5 on your agenda, the ends policies. We bring to you, even though this is my second time going through the ends policies, we fresh eyes bring fresh perspective, and it's nice to have a new set of eyes take a look at the wording, a new set of eyes in the form of Diane Schumacher, who always has great suggestions and greatly appreciate that. But basically, to summarize, and the changes are all highlighted or struck from the previous wording, but it's mainly the changes are code changes. Ways that student info is reported has changed, so quartiles are not necessarily reported. It's hard to give reports to the board where we don't have that information reported to us as a district. There were some suggestions by various committee members who were added in there. I think Director Liebig, you subbed in one of the early discussions when we had talked about the reading. We had the word and engaging, which I know probably isn't what you were going for, but it's better than what was there. And then addition of disaggregating data, which is critically important. We have to make sure that in line with what we're striving towards with our strategic goals, that we're disaggregating data and shining a light on where we need improvements. And then there was a typo that we finally fixed, I believe, with Dying Arts becoming Fine Arts. So any questions or concerns about the ends policies? This is part of our routine 3-year rotating calendar of work.
Well, I did wonder, on each one of them, the last 2 bullet points were omitted. And what was the logic, that was driving that decision?
Let me see that.
The quartiles.
It's the way it's left, it just sounds like we're trying to reduce the gaps. It seemed like the function of those last 2 bullet points was to kind of say, yeah, but we're not going to reduce them by pulling the top down. We're going to reduce them by pulling the bottom up. And I don't know if those were worded in an ideal way, but I just wondered if there was something that motivated that change.
Are you talking about the?
So, for example, on the first page, the last 2 bullet points.
The second.
Oh.
Last bullet point.
Okay, I'm sorry. I went all the way down to the bottom. Okay. Yeah, that had to do with the way that statistics are reported to us regarding reading proficiency, that we don't have the quartiles. 3 years ago, when we had reviewed that, honestly, sounds good, right? Sounds good that we want the difference between we want the lower quartile to make improvement. We want the gap between the quartiles to change, but we don't have that information reported to us. I don't believe anymore on the on reading assessments. Is that correct, Jane or Diane? I'm trying to remember the discussion we had.
Right, that was the discussion, and also trying to anticipate what kind of data we might be able to get from Smarter Balance or
Right.
whatever state assessment may be coming down toward us. So we really felt confident that we could continue to provide those first 3 bullets. And we also looked at those first 2 bullets, really trying to address that goal of increasing achievement for all, and then also closing the gap. So hoping to capture your first question, we aren't closing the gap by bringing the top down because we're continuing to increase the achievement for all.
I'm still a little bit, as you've anticipated, not totally satisfied with that reading goal because I wish it wasn't purely so focused on reading comprehension and without any incorporation of exposure to and understanding of literary works. Because one of the trends you see is we get these sort of canned reading comprehension exercises instead of reading books. So I would like to see something more specific in that department about not just reading, but about the sort of fine arts component of that, if you want to call it that.
Well, and I agree with you, Chris. And one thing, we're exposing. Students will observe and participate in multiple fine arts experiences, which is great and it's admirable and everything like that. I'd like to see that we're also exposing our students to the opportunities of alternative career paths other than college, that type of a thing. And I don't know how that would fit in, but that's just something in the future. And I echo the concerns with the reading because I've been hearing some reports that there's a lot of listening to text is being considered equivalent to actually reading text. And I want to make sure that our students are actually doing the reading in their reading requirement.
Well, when we looked at, for instance, writing, students will over time independently write increasingly complex text with meaning, clarity, and purpose and application. You know, that was more than just independently write increasingly complex text, which is essentially what the reading said was we'll read increasingly complex. Students will, over time, independently read increasingly complex text with understanding. And Director Liebig actually brought that up. I think it might have been even September, possibly October. It was a long, which is why it's kind of rusty.
I'd have still been a member of that committee.
Might have been.
Happened.
Yeah, it might have been. It was. Oh no, actually, I think it was November. Right? It was after the board retreat in the fall. Yeah. So the discussion was to say, well, if we're looking for our students to write with meaning, clarity, and purpose, and if we're looking for under science, I think there was something there. Process of inquiry to construct scientific knowledge. I mean, there were additional things added in there. So, you know, I don't know how you write in policy. The real discussion at the committee level was how do you write into policy appreciation of the text that's being read. So, I guess, you know, and engaging meant that it wasn't just going to be rote. Blah, 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 blah type. You know, it was something that was supposed to be interesting to students. It was supposed to be garner potential appreciation, but you can't force appreciation on anyone. So this is something that we hammered out at the committee level, both, you know, when you were there and afterwards.
So there's always three choices, right?
Yeah.
We're happy with it and we approve it and there's no further action.
Yep.
We're not happy with it, you approve it, but decide to continue to work on it. Or you don't approve it and decide to continue to work on it. I suppose you can not approve it and not work on it, but. So are we to the point where we're sufficiently happy that we'd approve it and then decide if you want to continue to work on it?
Well, the three of us on the committee are bringing it to you for consideration for approval. So I'll just say that that's the P&G stance.
I had a couple of questions about the fine arts piece also.
That's a new ends policy as of just a couple of years ago.
So on average, the number of experiences or the range of art forms will increase over time. And I thought, well, why? You know, I mean, you're going to have the same, unless you're going to expand the number of hours that the students are in these art classes. It doesn't seem like the goal is to increase the number of experiences or art forms every year.
I think it says experiences and range of art forms.
In different ways.
What we will present to first graders, I mean, we would make something much more complex as they went through the system. I think that's kind of speaking to that, about the range of.
So you're saying it will increase from the time you're young to the time you're old?
I mean,
in the
I'm just
system?
saying, as people process through the system, I mean, what we're presenting at one age, I mean, I could be wrong, please correct me, but I'm just saying that it would be more complex as, you know, as it goes along.
I guess
At least that's how I'm reading it.
I was reading it kind of against, having just read the other ones, where it seemed like in each grade level, we were trying to have an increase from one year to the next.
I think fine arts, when you get into like character development in fine arts, it's a little different than at least measurement.
And then when it says the number and percent of students from the disaggregated subgroups will increase in voluntary participation in one of the more of the art forms, is that referring to extracurriculars or in the classroom during the actual art class?
I'm going to read it as we're going to work real hard to try to be more integrated in how we're trying to get more of our students from subgroups to be participating in some of these other.
But you're talking at that point not about the required curriculum, but about the extracurricular activities. Is that the idea? Because everybody has to take the art class, or unless you're talking about just the electives and getting more participation in the electives, which I guess I could understand.
I would look at it as all of the above.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying.
I would look at it as, I mean, especially it's voluntary participation. You know, when you said everybody has to take an art class, I would say the people who want to take a class that is considered fine arts or engage in extracurricular activities that are considered fine arts. I think the goal is to get more kids get more kids involved in their experience with the fine arts.
I think when we brought this, when we added this, it was working with the Kennedy Center around looking for different ways.
I was just going to say, so you've got curricular, co-curricular, and extracurricular. One of the big programs that we have moving right now is the Any Given Child Initiative, which creates an opportunity by grade level to increase exposure to the arts for students, whether they're embedded in a particular class. It may be co-curricular opportunities to experience performance art. At Hampshire, for instance, is one of the opportunities that we create for students. So some of those are curricular in the sense that they're directly in the classroom. Some are co-curricular. They occur during the day and are related to the curriculum, and others may be extracurricular.
Although that desire to get more participation in extracurriculars would not just be limited to the fine arts category, I would think, right? I mean, we would say the same thing for the math club or...
Right,
STEM
this one, though, is
after-school
particularly focused on
activities.
fine arts.
All right, I'd entertain a motion.
I don't know if it's appropriate for me to make the motion since our committee's bringing it to you.
I think you should go for it.
Doesn't
That's what
matter.
committees do, right?
Yeah.
I move that the board approve the amendments to the ends policies as presented by the Policy and Governance Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and Directors Liebig and Hemingway voting nay.
All right, is there a desire to continue work, or,
On the ends policies?
yeah?
It'll,
I know it's on a 3-year cycle, or it could be taken up at any point in the future.
could be taken up at any point in the future if something changes and the board directs it, but otherwise it'll be 2020 roughly. 2019-20 school year.
All right, further discussion, otherwise we'll move on. Next agenda item is Appendix 4, Brian.
Moving on to Appendix 4, just to summarize the changes, obviously No Child Left Behind no longer exists. That's been remedied with the addition of Every Student Succeeds Act. We've changed the wording from Iowa assessments to state mandated assessments because it does seem to be a bit up in the air as far as what type of assessments we'll be using. Thankfully, it sounds like it won't be Smarter Balance, but that's my editorial. We made sure to add that we are disaggregating data by subgroups, which, as I mentioned before, is critical for us achieving our strategic goals. And additionally, the achievement between subgroups will decrease from previous years is directly part of our strategic goals.
Can you just talk about, it looks like you made a change about, and maybe it's just because the data's not available, that you made a change about matched cohorts? You know, testing the actual kids who took it the previous year and looking at isolating them out to see what's happening, and that seems to have been taken out, and I just don't know if that's because it's not available anymore or because that was for another reason.
I think it was because it wasn't available anymore. Diane, do you care to? You took the ball on that one and added some valuable perspective. Again, the fresh eyes is nice. This is the second time for me going through Appendix 4, and it's helpful to have the.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just that the data wasn't available to be able to do the matched cohort. So we're still looking at a cohort from 3rd grade to 4th grade, but we just weren't able to match them as to which exact students were tested both years.
And the major deletion there is the same reason there on the second page. This stuff's just not available for the quarters.
Quartiles, right?
One thing I wondered about in item number 2 on that first page, state mandated assessment for grades 3 through 11, and I'm wondering if there's a chance that that is going to change in the state legislature, that maybe they're no longer going to require.
Well, essentially, if that were to happen, then we come back at this every 3 years, and I mean, if it was critical, then I suppose you could send it back to P&G. But quite frankly, you know, some of the things that we're cleaning up here have needed to be cleaned up for a couple of years, but it's just part of the 3-year cycle.
Okay.
But I think that's a fair question. Let's
I
hope
think
that.
part of the intent, too, was to make this less language-specific, so that there was room for whatever came out of the state legislature.
Well, I wonder what would happen if we just crossed off those words, state mandated assessment, whatever they are.
Or will we be reflecting the achievement from them?
Well, I mean, if they only make us test in 3 or 4 grade levels, that's all we're going to have. But if they do, I mean, is there a way to express just, show us whatever data we're required to do? Well, I'm kind of indifferent about it, but I did wonder over it just because I know there's been some talk about reducing the annual nature of it all.
I would presume we're going to wind up with a state assessment. It's just a question of which one we wind up with.
All right, entertain a motion.
Since I'm on a roll, I move that we approve the Appendix 4 amendments and changes as presented by Policy and Governance Committee.
Further discussion? Oh, sorry, second? Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Directors Liebig, Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea and Hemingway voting nay.
All right, next topic is 500 series, Brian.
So the 500 series, a lot of that is Iowa code as referenced or as tied into our own district policies. So a lot of it had to do with updating the references to Iowa code, which we got Joe Holland to take a look at and update all the legalese. Then there was the change reflected in there that's occurred in the last couple of years as far as hours versus days defining the academic year. Again, references to No Child Left Behind have been changed to Every Student Succeeds Act. There was a title change where the title in the table of contents and the title of the restraint was changed to force, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah, where the wording has changed in Iowa code, and we had to change it in the table of contents to match the actual policy itself. And then the credit hour changes. This was a good eye. There was a question on the listing of credit hours. I think it was for physical education, if I remember correctly. Where which policy is that?
Requirements?
5.5.
Graduation.
Yeah.
505.
So some of the credit hour allocations there go back to the days when physical education was offered once every other day or once every third day all year round, and the way that we offer physical education has changed. So I think again, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Diane, maybe. I think it was Diane that said, why is that 27 credits?
Well, if I'm going to take credit for that, then I should probably take blame for that 309 that's in the line above it, because that probably should be 310.
Oh, we did say that, but we didn't change it.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember that.
So, yep.
So on the good conduct rule, one small thing and then a couple of other, I think, larger things. But on the good conduct rule is a small thing, but so students who wish to have the privilege of this is 503.4, wish to have the privilege of participating in extracurricular activities must conduct themselves in accordance with board policy and must refrain from activities which are illegal, okay, immoral or unhealthy. And I thought, immoral or unhealthy? I mean, are we going to police the morality of these and healthiness? I mean, all 3 of my children would be excluded from, if we take that literally, because they don't eat their vegetables. I just, those words kind of, if it were me, I would say illegal or in violation of, school rules. But I don't know what to make. What sorts of things are we going to stop somebody from doing sports for that aren't illegal or in violation of school rules?
Well, I will look up Iowa Code 280.13 if you'd like here. It was my belief that the wording was a direct representation of the Iowa Code, which means it's,
Vague.
yeah. But it may not be what I'm seeing here. So, I suppose if there's the question that Diane just raised about the credit hour number having to be changed from 309 to 310, I'm always willing to
I mean, we can send it back.
take that suggestion and send it back to P&G.
We'll write a long list of what's unhealthy and immoral and attach it. It'll be a
getting
30
worried.
to 60-page document. We'll get that back to you, Chris.
All right. Well, a couple other things you might think about at least at the same
Okay.
time. So 503.5.
Tell you what, let's do this. Since we're probably going to send it back to committee, why don't you write it up and send it to us for the committee so that we can work on it and then try and incorporate any comments you may have?
One of them I'd like to mention just because it ties in, I mean, the 503.5 about corporal punishment, it uses some of that same language that comes from the statute that applies to the seclusion rooms. And if we're going to have some kind of recommendation on that, I mean, the idea that we can use reasonable and necessary force in order to quell a disturbance seems awfully broad. And I know the statutes permit that, but I wonder if we might want to put a little more restriction on the use of reasonable force. Because there's all kinds of things that qualify as disturbances. And then the other one was just about some of the student records access stuff, and I'm trying to put that together in my head with some of the concerns people have raised about data sharing for some of these either testing companies or other programs that we have with outside contractors. And it's about as much as I can articulate that at the moment. I mean, do we have a unified policy about what we allow our contractual partners to do with student data? And if so, is it reflecting that or is it different from that? So I just throw those out there as things that you could think about.
All right, so we'll kick the 500 series back to P&G for the
That's
discussion.
fine. I'm still going to encourage you to write it up for me because
Yeah.
I'm not taking notes on what you're saying. So, okay.
Kick it back.
So I don't think we need a motion for that. So.
Okay, further discussion on that one? All right, moving into teaching and learning, the GEO bond is really a double item, so there's nothing to talk there. I'm going to move on to special ed update, Steve.
And I'm going to turn this over to Jane. She's got some information on the survey that was completed and some opportunities for us as we move forward in terms of taking action based on the information that we learned as part of the survey.
Okay, get started. Thank you. Just a little update on the timeline with the survey. The survey. Second one. Thank you. I'm sure that's the right one, not the survey. The survey was provided to parents in the month of February. There were 4 different reminders that were sent out by the K-12 Insight Company, and I know that's part of the explanation at the beginning of the survey itself. I received a contact then from the K-12 people on March 2nd to let me know that the survey had been completed and that they needed a contact from us then on the structure and the format of the survey itself. We were able to speak that week then on March 4th, I do believe, as to what we wanted for a format, how they were going to put the information together for us. I then was contacted on April 4th to let me know that the survey had been completed. They pushed that out to us. I distributed that to our executive cabinet. It was in draft form at that time for any particular feedback. Questions on the formatting, did it seem clear? Did we like the graphing, those kinds of things? And then we were able to receive the final draft then on last Friday, April 6th? 7th, April 7th. So they knew we were wanting it in time for this particular board meeting, so they worked to try to get that accomplished. So it was in our hands in a final form then for today's meeting. As far as some of the highlights, if you've had a chance to look at the survey, which many of you have, I know Julie stole a little of my thunder here as far as some of the positives and some of the concerns that were pointed out with that particular survey. Things that parents cited as far as what they felt pretty good about, connection to their child's special education teacher, and that was, we know that about our teachers and our students, that's where that point of contact is really pretty important, and parents were very positive about their experience with their particular child's teachers. The IEP meetings themselves were scheduled at times that were convenient, that they felt like they were active participants, and that there was adequate time that was provided for those meetings. There's also positive comment around access to the general education curriculum and also around their child's ability to access extracurricular activities that any of our general education students were able to access. Some major areas for us to continue to do some work on are in that area of special education information itself. So parents wanted more information on organizations and support groups that were available for children with disabilities, both in the area and probably at the state level as well. One major area that stuck out to me, too, was the opportunity for parent education and training, along with what parent rights are, the IEP process. It's pretty complicated when you're first stepping into that, and even some of our more experienced parents still find that they have a lot to learn. So we want to work with the AEA on that and talk about what are some parent training options and opportunities that we could bring down here to the district. Another area was transition services. As students transition at those capstone years, and especially as they start looking at transitioning out of that K-12 setting, what are those services and supports that are available for my child once they leave public school? That's a really scary time for a lot of parents. Knowing what we're handing our child off to, you kind of know what school is about. You don't necessarily know what it looks like, and especially with children with more significant disabilities. So those are some things that we need to do some work on and try to provide more and better information to our parents, provide extra communication in those particular areas. As stated before, we had a 21% participation rate. The survey again was pushed out on 4 different times during the month of February. The surveyors at K-12 Insight say that 21% is really a pretty good return rate. We would have liked to have seen it a lot higher. I look at this in the same way that we look at when we gather information on anything. It gives us a starting point. We talk about assessing children and collecting multiple methods of collecting assessment data. We're going to look at that in this way too. We've got a starting point now, we've got a baseline, and we'll just have to figure out how do we continue to collect data from our parents or information from our parents as we move through trying to reestablish that trust, improve our communication with our families and with our staff, and try to come up with an easy, non-threatening way to try to get consistent information back from our parents. So any questions on that?
I have a question about page 11. Just let you go to it so we can see what we're talking about, if you don't mind. I'm sorry. Do you want me to go ahead?
That's okay.
Okay.
Page 11?
Yeah.
Understanding special ed.
Yeah, understand by school level. So I'm just curious, so the understanding that parents have, and I'm generalizing these questions here, to understanding that they have a special education is decreasing the longer they're in the school system. So what's happening there? Are children dropping out of special ed? Are more children being added into special ed as they get older? What do you think explains the drop in parental understanding? Because it seems like it would go the opposite. The longer they're in the system, the better they would understand it.
As far as how a parent would answer that, I can give you a guess.
I'm just wondering what your theory is.
What my theory is. Well, I think there might be an assumption on our part that parents have a clear understanding as they're working through the system, so we maybe don't do as much on the front end of explaining things. For example, parental rights. Sometimes parents will say, yes, I understand, or I don't need to have those reviewed in the same way that it was earlier on, so we don't necessarily take the time in some of those meetings to do that particular piece. We may make some assumptions that parents do understand the process as they've been in the system a little bit longer. The vast majority of children entered the system as elementary age students. So as we start looking at junior high and senior high, again, we may make some assumptions about their level of understanding with the process. After being a junior high principal for 9 years, and I'm looking at that junior high data, that bothers me a lot, that's one of the areas where we see the biggest dip and decline in a lot of the areas. My guess on that is that's that first step into the secondary setting, and so the structure of that looks very different. Some of the feedback I'm not sure that the general education teachers have that same understanding of my child's plan as my special educator. So I think those are some things for us to look at a little bit deeper and to get more data on down the road. And maybe we can do, years ago we would give parents a survey at the end of an IEP meeting. Again, a very informal paper pencil, fill this out and drop it off in a drop box for us to be able to kind of keep a temperature rating on what their level of understanding was and their feeling of participating in those meetings. I think based on some of these things that we see here, we need to know a little bit more and dig in a little bit more about what's going on with some of this, because all of these are important areas. We finished our last district developed service delivery plan group at the Special Ed Advisory Committee last night, and we talked with them about this being possibly next year's project that particular group takes on. It's a mix of community members, parents, staff, that take a look at some of the things that are going on in the district, that parent education component, and this particular piece or some things we talked about with that group is maybe them taking on it and providing some structure and some opportunity for us to grow.
Okay. This is purely anecdotal, but what I have heard parents tell me is that in elementary school they tend to have a better connection with the para or the special ed teacher, and when their child goes to junior high, all of a sudden they're just sort of thrown in, and they may have a para one day, they may show up for school the first day of school and have no para, where they're used to having somebody with them all the time. I've actually heard that happen, where they were to have a para with them in their IEP and there was no para on the first day of school. So I guess I would encourage the special ed director, when she comes, to really examine that transition between elementary and junior high for special education children specifically, because I think that's a point at which we're kind of losing some of them. And what I'm wondering, another data piece I'm interested in is, are some of those children leaving the district at that point, or are they homeschooling? Are they so frustrated that they're actually pulling out of the system?
Those are good questions to ask. I think we need to know more. This tells us that we need to know more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. On page 22, where it's communication, the first question, general ed and special ed education staff members effectively communicate with each other about my child's IEP. If you take the disagrees and the I don't know, it's 35%. Mm-hmm. That's pretty strong. And that one's very concerning. On 28, on the transitions one, there's a lot.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm confused.
I'm sorry. Yeah, on page 28, transitions. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around.
Right. I was still doing the math on the the last one.
I'm pretty sure I'm right. I added the 14 and 14 and the 7. So that's the disagrees.
Thank you.
Strongly disagree,
right,
and don't know. So it's 35%. This is strong.
Disagree or don't know. Mm-hmm.
And then in transition, there's a lot of don't knows as well. In the transitions response, and on the seclusion one, I got a problem with. We're using seclusion and timeout interchangeably, and I think that has can have a different thing. I wish we would have stuck with one or the other. And when you look at the, is seclusion or timeout part of your child's behavior intervention plan. Only 10%, only 10% of the 21% responded, yes? So that's like 21,
33 people responded.
Right, 33 out of the whole thing fit that category?
Correct.
So-
That means 10% of the respondents had a
And
child that had a
10%
behavior intervention plan.
10% of the 20% that were surveyed.
Correct.
Right. It's a very, very, very small group on that one.
So,
Can I, a couple things. One, I think there is a need, as a person that looks at research a lot, there is a need to ask a more complex question to, when we're looking at satisfaction, because going back to by grade level, that can skew this a little bit, because if you're talking about transitioning from one teacher and one para to multiple teachers, so that probably should be a little bit more complex question about how that, some of those are answered, which, I mean, with the digging in, I think that's helpful. And then the other thing is, and I know one day we'll actually talk about how many children are impacted by timeout rooms or the seclusion is used. And so I think that will speak to this a little differently as well. But that's not included here, so that's kind of hard to do apples to apples. So.
The questions, for the most part, were provided by K-12 Insight, who are the survey group, and we went with those recommendations. And again, I still keep looking at this. This was some data gathering for us. This was important information for us to get. Because of the size of the group of the respondents, it gives us a picture or a snapshot. It doesn't, by any means, give us the entire picture of what's going on, but it gives us a good starting point to move forward with some of the work that we've already been doing.
Well, and I think one of the comments made by the public in the community comments is right on too, is that when you look at, you know, how many people were invited to respond and the small percentage that did respond, that should be alarming right from the outset.
I think that's a little difficult to say though, Phil, because I'm just saying, from when you talk about research, and I'm not saying that, I mean, 300 people responding is not a small number in comparison to the overall number. I mean, anything over 10% is considered significant. And so the fact that there was 21%, I don't want to take away from those folks' experience by saying, oh, that wasn't enough. I mean, I'm not saying that we can take this survey and say this is everyone's experience, but I don't want to take away, I feel like if we are just like, oh, well, it's just only a few of them and their opinions really don't matter here, I think that also hurts those families too.
Don't take what I'm saying as saying that their opinions aren't important. They are.
I'm just asking for clarification.
But and I think one of the points made by the public too is very telling, in that, you know, we want 100% satisfaction and 100% feeling that we're doing what's in the best interest of their kid, because I want us to be that way, if nothing else.
Can I jump in on that?
That should be our goal.
but you're not going to get 100% on a survey.
No, I understand
I
that.
actually have a question about that, though, because I went back to the enrollment report, and I just don't understand. In the enrollment report on page 33, it says that their special education head count for this year is 1,164. Okay? And we sent out 1,500 and something surveys. Is that right? So, and it just kind of struck me. I'm curious, who are we surveying if our head count is 400 less than the survey participants?
Is that including, is it maybe a difference between the IEP and the 504 having an effect
This
there?
wouldn't have included 504 students. It would have included all students with an IEP, whether they were instructional IEPs or not. So you would have students that receive support services only through the AEA.
So maybe
would be part of that count. We sent the information out through through Power School. And I'm not sure, I guess I'm going to look at Diane, or do we have, when we look at the numbers, do we have the pre-K kids included in our? Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So they would have also been included in the survey as students receiving special education supports and services, but not on.
I think the other thing might be dual families or split families. So you might have two contacts for that that home or that situation in that case. So that would inflate the number of surveys sent out in comparison to the head count of students.
Like I said, I just saw 1,500. I'm like, I don't remember that being the number from the enrollment report, so I just looked it up. But obviously, you know, this is a good place to start. The communication information, clearly, you know, no matter what level you're looking at, obviously something we need to work on. The communication between gen ed and special ed staff, you know, that's something that we clearly need to be focused on. I did, just thinking about this, you know, my wheelhouse is a little bit different than perhaps any of the education professionals here, but in a patient encounter, the best patient interactions come from patients who come prepared, and I don't know how parents can come prepared to an IEP if some of them aren't given the documents to know what they need to know when they sit there in the IEP meeting. So I hope to goodness sakes that we fix that one.
Well, the piece with that complicates it a little bit is you're walking a little bit of a fine line with that, because we have situations where if you send that document out prior to the meeting, there's a sense that things have already been predetermined. Here's the document. All of these things have already been decided. So why am I coming and having input? You've already got the IEP done.
That's helpful.
Draft really isn't draft. So there are some states where that is required, that document is sent out prior to the meeting.
Okay.
Our teachers provide that for the most part at the meeting in draft form and try to reassure parents that truly is in draft form. Some will have the document available electronically, and they actually work and develop the document on site. So they may have it up projected on a smart board. And so as the discussion goes on, the goals are developed at that time.
Okay.
Now, again, I can't say that with 100% certainty that's a huge piece of it, but that certainly impacts it here, where we try to determine, do the parents want those documents ahead of time or not,
Okay.
because of that.
Is there just a general document that can talk about the kind of the agenda and the different steps of an IEP that we can send?
They
That
do
maybe
get the
it's not
agenda.
specific.
Mhm.
I just think, I mean, I'm just kind of reminding people about terms and potential questions that they can ask. I think that could be helpful in advance of terminology, things like that can prepare people for when they walk in. I think that's something, I don't know if that's developed or not, but if so, I could see that as being something helpful to prepare a parent. Maybe it's not specific about their situation, but if they have that information, it might help them think of some other questions that they could ask that they can bring along with them to help prepare them.
And we do have some parents that will ask for it, the draft. Can I have that, the week
Yeah,
before,
I think
because they
in
want
addition,
to have time?
in addition
Mhm.
to that, I'm just saying, if the issue is that people do not feel like they're getting any documentation, we should have a standardized document that we provide for all parents about what the process is, how it works in multiple languages, so that they can have that in advance, so that they can ask questions according to what are the services. That's one of the issues that comes across in special education is I don't know what all the services are that I can ask for. So it ends up being that our parents who have more connections, have more resources, end up in a more privileged situation where they know to ask for some of those things. If we have those things that we're giving it out to everyone, where everyone has access to that in advance, and they can ask for that. And that may look differently at elementary and in junior high and high school, but I think somewhere this is a space where it's an equity issue where we can be more consistent about the standardization about the information that's provided for parents. And you can also add in addition a draft form of your child specifically. I just think that's a cleaner, clearer way that we can specifically do that as a district to make things a little bit easier for parents. And I know it's a lot of information, but I would rather have people with too much information than not enough.
I just wanted to ask one weird question, because we're just starting to, I think, see positive gains here with like weighted resource allocation. I'm curious how much of I'm interested to see what our recommendations are moving forward from where we are now, because some of communication, some of information dissemination is very difficult when, obviously, when our staff and our teachers are working so hard to take care of so many students. And I'm anxious to see how potentially weighted resource allocation, considering special education needs within each building is part of the equation. I'm anxious to see how that may have positive gains on our communication, not only with parents of students with special education needs, but I'm also hoping between general ed and special ed. At least that's my sincere hope that change that we've just instituted this year is going to have positive gains very quickly, I hope.
No, I would agree. And I think, the other thing that would be a good thing as I'm listening to all of you too is to do a little more outreach with parents, especially this spring, and ask them what would be helpful for you as far as communication in light of this survey, whether you participated or not. Directly with this, if you did, we'd still like to hear a little more specific information about you. How would you like us to communicate? What's some information that you would need?
I was just going to ask sort of a little question and a related larger question, but it kind of goes to what you were just saying. I mean, it would be nice if the N were larger, and can you think of anything we could do? You mentioned earlier that there used to be a form at the end of each IEP meeting, and of course then you have to worry about whether they have anonymity concerns. But if there was some kind of institutional way that you could just make it automatic almost, that people would be able to give some kind of response. I mean, it's never going to be 100%, but do you have, and I'm asking you this question, of course, you're about to hand this whole portfolio over to someone else, and I'm glad, because we've been asking you to do too many things. But if you have any thoughts as you're about to do that.
I think that would be a good question again for some of our parent groups to ask them how would they be the most comfortable in providing us information back. I think opportunities always, the more opportunities that you provide and the more ways that you provide those opportunities, you've got a better shot at getting that information back. But if there's still concerns about what's going to happen to that and what may happen to my child because I am honestly sharing some concern about the programming or with the district programs, then we want to make sure that parents feel safe doing that too, so that the information we do get is as accurate as it can be.
I guess the bigger question then that comes out of that is just, I think it's good that we're doing a survey, but I guess part of me says I look at the survey results and I think, well, I could imagine that maybe if we had given the survey, a year and a half ago, we would have gotten results that looked sort of like that, and still we had a problem that we weren't recognizing and catching and didn't get caught until someone else outside of the district basically forced us to catch it. And so I don't know if there's an answer to this question, but is there something you can do in terms of just systems to make sure that we'll catch something like that if it happens again, if it starts to happen again?
I think that's part of the work with the Department of Ed Corrective Action Plan. Mm-hmm. There's some pieces of that, which is a little bit of what I've got here. I'll just slip to my last slide here. That's a piece of the planning with that particular process. We had several components of that were time dated, where they were short-term goals, true corrections to happen with some of the paperwork and the processes. The other piece that's a part of that is a longer-term systems approach to the work that we're doing, specifically with those things in mind. So we know, looking back with this information, with the information from the accreditation review, we know that we've got continue to have work to do. I think we will always have work to do. It'll always be a work in progress, because you don't want to slip back into old ways. You don't want to slip into misinterpretations of processes when things change. And in special education, a lot of times the paperwork, something's changing. It seems like all the time. So we need to make sure that we're able to communicate that to our staff, that they understand what those changes are, and that they understand to the level that they can apply those changes to the work that they're doing. And then also communicate those changes to the parents. So it's a complicated process. It doesn't mean that we can't do it, but that's part of our work with the implementation advisor with that corrective action plan, is to talk about what do we need to put into place so that we continue to move the system forward. And we provide people with regular opportunities to give us feedback, good and when we're not doing what we thought we were doing.
Yeah, it's hard because the survey, again, perfection is probably never going to be attainable 100% on every.
But again, I agree. It should be the goal. That's where the bar can be.
At what point do you say, we really, this is either expectable imperfection, or this is something that we really got to, and it's hard to know how to look at those survey results.
Yeah. And again, it's one piece of information.
Mm-hmm. So open enrollment, just related to this, follow me here. So open enrollment is something that we keep talking about. How many students are open enrolling out? How many are open enrolling into our district? And I'm curious because I do know of some cases where parents of students with special education needs are not being served in surrounding school districts, and they're open enrolling into ICCSD. I don't see the information here about some of our statistics on our special education as far as who's in. Are people leaving because of their special education not being met, or are they coming in because we have better special education than other districts? I'd kind of like to see some of that information as well.
I'm going to look at Denise, jot that down for us to take a look at. I don't have those numbers.
No,
with us.
no, I wouldn't
Typically
expect
where
you
we
to.
get those, though, Brian, would be at that 18 to 21. I know a lot of districts aren't able to provide that adult and transition kind of programming
Sure.
for their adult age students.
Sure.
So we probably see it a little more at that level. But yeah, I think that would be good information for us to take a look at or to pull up.
I thought we got in the budget document, like on the 4th page or something that our special ed numbers have been declining for 5 years.
Correct.
straight.
Correct. They're currently, I think, 9.4%. So that's been really good, and that has to do with a lot of the work that's been going on in the district with the MTSS structures and the intervention plans. So
Yeah,
that's
10
great.
years ago it was at 15.3. So.
I was hoping we'd have a chance to talk with Lisa Glenn, because I know you're in a tenuous situation. You got 2 feet in both ends of the pool. But I prepared some questions for her, and I think a big thing too going forward is mending the relationship with Grant Wood. Maybe, do you guys think it hasn't been, doesn't need mending, or it's strong? But I think that there's been a problem there, and we've got hopefully with our new hire, she can come in and get us back to an area where we have that cooperation and advocate what's best for all of our students in the district.
Yep. She's a former AEA employee. She was a special ed consultant out in Johnston, so she's got that experience to bring to bear.
And I hope that these can be forwarded to her, and if she has an opportunity to answer those before, I know she's got a different employer, and you can only serve one boss.
And we want to be respectful of that. As anxious as we are, we want to be respectful for Ankeny as well.
So Jane, I just wanted to say, I think, the opportunities, I'm excited about the opportunities. So, the positives are fine, but I'm excited about the opportunities. And I think, parent training communication, I don't know if you can bring the slide back up. I think your transitions and then, leveraging the support groups makes perfect sense. And I think we've talked a little bit about, I think Director Deloche brought this up at the board retreat, taking the opportunity while we have some forums with the state and et cetera to move beyond compliance and get into improvement. Sorry, I'm talking about your summary slide.
I should have left that up there. Chris, let me help.
So I guess the question I have is, don't worry about it at this point. So
Okay,
I'm
I'm
excited
sorry.
about the action plan and master planning. We really talked at the retreat about having like a multi-year master plan, and I'd like to see the at-risk plan, our one-pager, addressing all of our opportunities, be strengthened in the special ed area. So by when can we expect an action plan based on everything we've talked tonight? I think we should at least onboard, so maybe it's August, I don't know, or Steve, maybe this question's for you, but by when would we expect to get beyond compliance and actually have a plan or a master plan that addresses these opportunities?
I'll say right now, my understanding is that the Department of Ed is going to continue to sponsor the implementation advisor that we've gotten from Michigan, Beth Steenwick, who's done a great job. One of the plans that we have in place right now is in June, and I'm really excited about that, is that we are going to get all of the directors together. So all the programs that Laura oversees, that Diane oversees, Adam, we've got Kingsley, we'll get all of our directors together to talk about what's the work that everyone's doing, where is there overlap that we probably don't need everybody focusing on, where are the connections, and how can we support each other in that work for all of the district children and all of our staff. So I think when that happens, that we'll be able to start looking at a plan that's more than just siloed in just special ed or just at risk, or there's so much work going on that just benefits all of our students, and that gets me excited, because I think what benefits one group of kids is going to benefit everybody when we keep that approach. So I don't know how quickly after that meeting happens that we could have a fully developed action plan, but I think there'll be the starts of some at that time. her work is to continue for a year. I'm not saying it'll take that long to get an action plan put together, but I think she'll be instrumental in helping us get there.
But it's a great opportunity. Let's utilize that resource, right? It's a
Absolutely.
great resource. Let's utilize it, but let's utilize it to, drive improvement, not just compliance, right? So, Steve, is August too early? I mean, July would be great, but we want to.
No, I don't think August is too early in terms of getting the report back from the state. We've got this information to work off of. We'll have time to meet, bring Lisa up to speed, make sure she's introduced to the team, able to digest the data, get some feedback from the AEA and from the state, and then I would think that if nothing else, we can certainly have a tentative proposal in front of you and get some feedback, and then go back and get it refined.
I'd love to push sooner, but it just, if you don't have the new director, I'd rather have her bought in and driving it versus.
And
So-
when will Lisa have her feet under our table?
July 1.
July 1. So you're thinking within a month
Doesn't it-
she'll have it squared around?
So I guess
It can be
when
the-
Chris says August, I presume we have 2 meetings in August, and we may
It can
be
be
at
the
the
start
second
of the
meeting.
plan, right? It doesn't need to be, right? I mean, this is evolving.
Yep, yes, it will be. And I do want to say, too, that I really feel like over the last few months, too, our relationship with the AEA has been moving in a very positive direction. We get a lot of support from them in a lot of the work that we're doing. Part of it's through the corrective action plan, and some of it's just supporting our teachers and families out in the schools, too. So I think that's really made a very positive turn over the last several months as well. We couldn't be doing the work right now that we've been able to do without them.
And Steve, high level status on the corrective action plan is what? Is it 80%, 90%, 97% complete?
I don't know if I could give you a percent on that. I know that from the standpoint of the AEA, they've given us the green light. We are cleared with them. The Office of Civil Rights has been in, done their work. We know that Mr. Turnbull told us this is the busy time when they're out in the field. He'll try to get back to us as quickly as possible. We've completed all the steps with them. We're in process right now to complete the immediate steps. As Jane said, we still have another year to go with the state, but we should get some feedback from them shortly after the school year ends in terms of the work done so far this school year. So by the time Lisa hits the ground on July 1st, we should hopefully have a resolution from the AEA already in hand, resolution from the OCR, and some significant guidance from the state.
So we're on track with where we're supposed to be.
We are.
Or better.
We are.
My only caution is whatever plan we come up with, since I don't know when, maybe this happened sometime before, is we can't leave the parents out of this action plan. And so that's why I worry about it being August, knowing that with summertime that folks are maybe not as engaged. So I just don't want to leave their voices, experience out of whatever action plan we come up with, because then, I mean, they're the most impacted by this. So, I mean, I think it's great to do high level, but I don't want that to come across to families as though, oh, we'll get to you eventually because this is the plan we came up with. So that's why I'm a little worried about it being August.
Just to be clear, my point, that may be the plan. The plan may be to go gauging parents and go do all this.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying we just need to be really clear.
That's why I
about
use the
that.
word draft. I think we'd want to bring that to you,
But I think it's
recognize
just really important because
we need other
we don't
feedback.
need another situation where parents are feeling like their voices are being left out. So just
Well,
being really
for example,
clear
we
when that comes back.
know about the concern about transitions, and so certainly the ability to engage Capsto and have some conversations with them, I think, is going to be a really important part of that development.
Here's what can't happen, right? So, and the date doesn't matter. It just needs to be as sooner. Here's what can't happen. We go through, do a survey, we get everybody's input, and then what? Nothing. So that's why I think, it's, if it ends up being September, October, fine, but let's at least have some more dialogue in August. How about that?
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Jane. For discussion on the operational work, the loan agreement, Craig?
We have a unique opportunity. I'd like to call Pat White to the microphone to give the board a brief description of this opportunity. Pat was in a previous life a former county attorney, retired now 10 years, and community history buff. So take it away, Pat.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you. President Lynch, members of the board, thanks for the opportunity to share what I think is a really interesting opportunity, taking advantage of the fact that, as you know, Longfellow Elementary School is going to be closed for 15 months. At least that's the plan. And it has been the home of a community treasure now for over 40 years that probably is not real well known other than to Longfellow staff or parents. In 1934, the Jefferson Hotel, which was then much more of a hub of downtown Iowa City than is the case today, commissioned a local artist by the name of Mildred Pelzer to do a series of murals that eventually, and she painted them in the Jefferson Hotel in the heat of the summer without air conditioning. And they hung in the lobby of the Hotel Jefferson, where a young Pat White growing up in Iowa City and in a very different era riding his bike downtown spent time looking in the lobby of the Jefferson and became fascinated with these murals that are 4 feet high and 12 feet long. So they're, as Dwayne can attest and Craig and others, they're hard to find a place to hang. But I've been fascinated with these murals ever since. They are a depiction of Iowa City historic scenes. And the concept of historic scenes was brought about by Mildred and her husband, who was a professor of history at the University of Iowa, in a dinner meeting one evening with Carl Jessup, who was then the president of the university, and people like Benjamin Shambaugh and others. And the two that have ended up at Longfellow Elementary School depict the railroad arriving in Iowa City and a mural labeled, called Stage Ready, depicting a stagecoach stop, probably at the intersection of Clinton and Iowa Avenue or Clinton and Washington. Well, since Longfellow is going to be closed, it occurred to me as a retiree and not having a lot to do, wouldn't it be a great idea to expose a wider share of the community to the historic and artistic value that these murals have? And so I set about trying to convince people, and one of whom was Craig, although I think the district had some trouble trying to figure out what to do with this guy who was calling and proposing to borrow these murals for a while. Well, over time, I persuaded Susan Craig, the director of the Iowa City Public Library, to display Railroad Arrives for this 15-month period, and Linda Copping, who's the director of the Iowa City Senior Center, and right across the street from a plaque denoting a stagecoach stop in early Iowa City, to display Stage Ready until it's time to return them to Longfellow School. You are the last formal stop in the process. When I got around to drafting a proposed loan agreement, I went to the University of Iowa Art Museum, and they were kind enough to loan me their format that they've used. They've been in the business of loaning art for about 8 years since the flood, including the Pollock, which is worth much more than these are. So I drafted an agreement. It's been revised several times, submitted to the city attorney's office, and now signed by the Iowa City manager, submitted to Joe Holland on your behalf, revised at each step along the way, and now is ready, hopefully, for your approval. Assuming your approval, we have scheduled an opening event at the Iowa City Library on Wednesday night, May 24th, and all of you and everyone in the room is invited to attend, which will be the first public viewing of Railroad Arrives. Program will be moderated by Susan Craig as the director. I will probably say a few words. We've invited Chris Pizarnik, the principal at Longfellow, to say a few words, and our main speaker is going to be Sean Ulmer, who's the director of the Cedar Rapids Museum of Art, which houses 3 of the 5 known surviving Pelzer murals. And I want to add, these 2 murals that are at Longfellow are really the handiwork of preservation of what was then the Iowa State Bank and Trust Company, specifically George Dane, who now resides at Oak Knoll and was at the time a trust officer at Iowa State Bank and Trust. When the university bought the Jefferson Hotel to turn it into university offices, he found these murals in the basement of the Jefferson, rescued them, had them restored at bank expense, and ultimately decided to place them at Longfellow School. And his memory, although somewhat faded at this point, is that he convinced a woman who was then the librarian, which used to be the term in use, at Longfellow to take possession of the murals. One now hangs in the media room, and one hangs just inside the north door on the north wall, on the west wall, which is probably not an ideal solution. And in the remodeled Longfellow, probably there'll be better hanging place for that one at least. So I'm here to urge your favorable vote on this loan agreement and your participation in our opening event. These murals will also be featured in what some of you may know as the gallery walks, which occur quarterly in downtown Iowa City. And the two sites will be on the gallery walk and publicized, but they'll be available every day. The senior center and the library are open during this 15-month period. And I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you have.
Well, thank you for the history lesson. It's amazing, especially when you start
It is,
talking
I think it is amazing.
a 100-year-old building, the history that just, all the
I,
stories.
by the way, am a Longfellow alum, among other things, and a City High graduate.
Well, I'm going to suggest we burst into action, so thank you.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the Pelzer loan agreement.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim.
I plan to have Pat come back in on a regular basis because I'm going to miss his history lessons.
No doubt. All right, on to the next topic is the fiscal year certified budget. Craig, and I guess I'd suggest we start with a motion to approve, and we can discuss it. Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the fiscal year 2018 certified budget.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Actually, I do have something I'd like to add. So I think maybe the February meeting, it was suggested when, I don't remember which one of us it was, had asked to have a little more input in the priority piece of the decisions for the budget. It was suggested that we look at the IASB site to get some information about school finance. So I did that. The very first step that it lists in that is the budget regarding school finance, but example budget process. The board develops budget parameters and budget priorities. So that took me to looking at the assumptions that Craig gave us on January 24th. And I guess what I would say is that the assumptions that you came up with, I have no issue with. But what I would like to see for next year is I'd like to see the board have some more hands-on involvement in setting priorities. So the assumptions are going to remain the same. I mean, they're altered every year, but you've got things in here like property tax and allowable growth, state percent of growth. Excuse me, new name. And some of those things will remain the same. But as far as budget priorities, I would like to see the board have some dialogue in that. So I don't know if that maybe would need to happen in November or December in a work session or several work sessions. But I will go ahead and vote for this budget. But next year, I'd like to have us have more input, and I'll be less inclined to support a budget in the future if the board doesn't have a more direct piece in the setting the priorities. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, I think, and you want to be done by December, so you'd want to start October or November, if it's not an ongoing process. But so you could add that to your timeline for next year to.
Bet.
Yep.
Yeah, I second that idea, even though I don't expect to be here by the time that starts happening.
You might get 3 more cracks at it. Barely.
You just have to say that every time you can, don't you?
It should be perfect by then. No, it's a great point. And again, it should be like an ongoing process, but we can build that up front.
We can do that.
Mm-hmm. All right, further discussion? All right, Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Just have not seen it yet, but, oh, there it is.
I haven't got yours, Deloach.
Oh,
You
I
vote
don't
yea?
have
Okay. Votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, next item is Appendix 9, Dwayne.
Thank you. We have 4 projects for your consideration this evening. First one is a change request at the Eastdale Transitions Project. It's only for $139.53, but we're following the procedures as directed. And the district requested some additional countertops and some casework there, but we also deleted a folding door, which kind of offset the cost. It's not a wash, but pretty close. And the project is pretty much completed, and they're using the space, so it's going well. At Liberty High School, we have a change request for $63,141, include about $7,200 in fire and electrical code updates and revisions. And then the district made nearly $46,000 in requests for an additional scoreboard, some additional audio-visual equipment for the auditorium, and an expensive item was heat pump control so we can improve the energy efficiency of that building. We'll have more direct digital control access. So we felt that was a worthy expenditure so we can manage our future utility costs. And then there were some unforeseen changes for electrical and structural. At Lucas Elementary, we have step 8 change request for $121,138. And of that, $110,000 was requested by the district. We had several meetings with the staff over there, and there were some items that were left out of the original project scope, so we could try and make sure we were within budget. We've determined that we've got the funds to cover it, so we're going to put some additional casework back in, some flooring, not unlike we did at Penn. You know, they had different types of flooring in that corridor up there. We ripped it all out and put one new type of flooring, the entire perimeter of the building, that ties it all together. We're going to do the same thing at Lucas. Same kind of flooring there at Lucas and Penn. So it'll just make the building look better. We also requested some additional plumbing fixtures be replaced. Then the best news of the evening is at Longfellow. And you just heard a great little presentation about the Pelzer murals. And with us tonight, behind me is Will Downing, who's one of the project architects from Rohrbach. And he's been working on the future locations of those murals, and he's here to answer any questions you might have. But the good news is we took bids. We got 7 bids for the project. They ranged from $9,110,000 to $9,927,000, and our target was $9,500,000. So we're going to be able to award this contract, including 2 alternates for Trazo and some additional fencing, for $9,354,000 to Larson Construction of Independence, and it's the same company that's building Alexander and Hoover East. So we're pleased. We're pleased with the plans, we're pleased with the price, we're pleased with the contractor. It's going to be a great project, and I think we hit the bullseye. So with that, I'd answer any questions you might have, or will.
No, I'd just say, you know, we approve Appendix 9 every meeting, but you hit these big milestones, and whenever we hit the big construction contracts, right, those are big milestones to our ability to stay on schedule and on budget. And so it's amazing. Here we are again with Longfellow on budget and looking to approve it on schedule, and so it's just tremendously exciting.
Just a little question about says the apparent low bidder was Larson Construction, but the amount is not at the number at the lower end of the range, so was there a bid that didn't qualify or something?
No, their base bid was the $9,110,000. With the alternates, it makes $9,300,000. So they were the low bidder. Yep.
All right, entertain a motion.
Mr. Kirschling, you had a question?
Yeah, well, not really a question, just since we're at step 8 on the transitions at Eastdale Plaza, I was just looking here. I'm not sure if this went up to the entire board, but they're planning an open house. Sorry, they're so excited. They're planning an open house for Thursday, April 27th from 4:30 to 7. Just want to make sure that the rest of the board is aware of that and that individuals out here are aware of that. There's a lot of excitement there, and between Capsto and the Transition Services Center. Looking for they're very pleasing. I stopped in there the other day. It looks great.
And I think they're going to honor their retiree that night a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Recognition for Shannon Sullivan. Shannon. She's been the teacher since the inception of that program. That's pretty impressive, too.
They might just try and grab onto her and hold her and keep her there.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Against her will.
Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the Appendix 9 items as presented.
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, next agenda item is items withdrawn from consent. Start with number 7. Phil?
Yeah. Okay, sorry, Lori. First one was C. This, again, I have problems when we're spending this kind of money, travel costs.
Which item is this?
This is the hire, lead hire, the AP.
Equal Opportunity Schools.
Yeah. And, you know, if the money's coming out of the foundation for my money, it's still our money. That way, again, I'm gonna get on my current technical soapbox, we keep going, tripping over ourselves on the AP end, and we're really missing a lot of other students. And post-secondary certification is necessary, but it's not necessary for it to be a 4-year college. And I don't know that we don't have staff that could be doing this presently, and it just seems to me pretty costly, and with the multiple travel. And I don't know that, you know, it says in here that trips will be spread across multiple districts within the region. Is anyone else in our region using them?
Matt, I don't know if you know whether or not any of the other schools that participated in the original meetings have signed on yet.
Yeah, I believe they're all at the same step of the process for us, but we believe there's some other districts in Iowa that are also working through this. When we attended the initial meeting, most of the urban ed networks are represented: Des Moines, Dubuque, Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, Davenport. I think they had initial interest back from Dubuque and Des Moines to do something similar.
And that's a belief, that's not an assurity. I mean,
I'm not aware if they're signed on or if they've been
so
granted the same
we could
opportunity.
be all alone, and we're on the hook for all the transportation.
No, I think the point of that comment is that they would try to bunch those opportunities so that it'd be reduced travel. They also look at Midwest opportunities to try to sandwich those. So the cost would not change based on that. I think it would just be a more efficient approach on their end and possibly allow them to spend some more time in the district if that works. But the overall cost of this program would be something upwards of $160,000. The district was awarded an $80,000 grant from the Jack Kent Cook Foundation, and then the foundation is matched out with $40,000. So the overall cost of the district's about a quarter of what it could have been originally to do this.
And you want to just talk to the intent, what we're trying.
Sure. So the intent is to identify high-achieving minority and low SES students that would be successful in some upper-level rigorous content. And, they look at AP or IB districts. We're an AP district, so they look at our participation rates in those classes and help us capture students that have the interest and the ability to be successful in those courses that we're not identifying right now or otherwise not selecting into those courses. So there's a programmatic approach that would give us a system long-term to implement. So their work with us is heavy for a year or two, but then after that, we have a system-based approach that we can continue to implement and address that achievement gap. So I think it goes right at your strategic goal 3 about trying to provide that equitable experience for all students, and this is an area we know we're not very equitable for all of our kids.
I have a few comments that are similar to Phil's. I'm just really on the fence about it, and I know it's not a whole lot of money in the scheme of things. But I kind of agree with Phil that sometimes it seems like just fixated on AP courses, which I think are, there's pluses and minuses to them. And we do have honors courses that aren't AP courses, and I assume that this program will not be dealing with, getting people into our non-AP honors track type of courses. Is that right? It's all AP focused?
Most of the data is going to center around AP participation rates, but part of the planning of this process will be, we know that there's oftentimes some prerequisites or some recommended courses that students take before they get into those AP classes. So part of the conversations, I think, will, for us as a system, look at how also students are accessing honors courses before they access those. But a lot of the data analysis they'll do will start with the AP classes and participation rates there.
I guess I'd be a little bit worried that, that they might be too focused on just driving up the number. And, sometimes it's right for a kid, sometimes it's not right for a kid. And it seems like already I kind of feel like, we're enticing some freshmen into joining our AP courses. And when I see freshmen in an AP course, I think, well, either that's not really a college level course, or freshmen probably don't belong in it, except for the very rare freshmen. So I just get a little bit worried about that, the numbers tend to drive the decisions about what to do, and maybe it's not always the best thing for a kid.
I think you'd see the other goal of the program is also to look at overall score rates. So it's not only participation rates, it's also success on that and some commitment to raising overall performance on those. So I think it's a dual focus piece, not just participation rates.
So it's really about driving rigorous curriculum and making sure, our students are getting involved.
Right. It's really about exposure to rigorous curriculum for students that we should be engaging those experiences for, otherwise weren't. We want to, a lot of the work is basing that on some student interest pieces too. So if students have interest in pursuing some other opportunity, this would be a great resource for us to help be able to link them into that opportunity as well. But I think that's the effort, is to try to get students engaged in that rigorous coursework.
This kind of goes to Phil's comment too, which is, this was originally presented to us on that night we talked about post-secondary readiness and completion, and I thought, I'm not sure this really is going to address the problem that was identified there, which is people literally having to take remedial courses or not finishing. And, that doesn't mean it's not an argument against this necessarily, but you do kind of wonder if maybe, our resources should be weighted toward trying to make sure people are successfully completing even just the people who won't ever be in advanced classes, maybe. And so I do sometimes worry that we're spending too much effort on who's in the AP courses. And then there was the privacy issue. I mean, do we know sort of what they can do with this data that they collect as a result of this?
Right. So Exhibit A of the agreement talks pretty specifically about how they handle the student data and confidentiality agreement about any student personally identifiable information and how that would be handled, compliance with FERPA laws. So I think we have a high degree of confidence in working through that with them, that any EOS staff that would be seeing that data is to help the school district with that student, and that all of the federal regulations for that would continue to apply, and that wouldn't be shared out with any outside group. If they were to present any of our data, it would not be identifiable by a particular student.
All right, entertain a motion.
I move that we approve item C7, lead higher equal opportunity schools.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries, with Directors Deloach, Rotland, Kirschling, Lynch, and Ressler voting yea, and Directors Liebig and Hemingway voting nay.
Thanks, Kim. On to number 9, Phil.
Yeah, number 9, and I apologize for getting swimming in paper here, but on that one, I'm kind of torn because there are some good things in here with our partnering with 4-H and that, but again, we're partnering with Sylvan for $4,000, and I'd like to think that we could have utilized district staff for $1,000 a week to to do the same type of programming, and my opposition is to using a per-profit educational tutoring service when we should be utilizing our own staff.
I think
Steve?
there's a little bit of a process that I can explain that hopefully that okay, I'm good now. I think that part of the grant approval process for our 21st Century Learning programs does actually encourage us to make sure that we're providing a combination of academic and enrichment opportunities, and that those can be delivered in a recreational format, especially for summer programs. And there's actually an encouragement by the DE, or we actually have a site evaluation going on right now. Vic Jarvis, our DE consultant that oversees our after-school and summer programs that are funded through the 21st Century Community Learning Centers. Part of that evaluation process is actually to see who we are partnering with and that we are providing those enriching opportunities. I think that sometimes when we think about our own staff having the time and resources to create those rich experiences, we do actually look to other partner organizations that can provide something with some expertise or some modules of experiences for kids that they already have created versus us taking the time to create that. And so there's a fairly extensive process that our director, Amy Mentier, goes through to submit all of those plans. And I think that it provides that enriching opportunity, and it's certainly something we could take a look at trying to create, but this is the way that we've been providing those opportunities to students. And so again, we have to submit, who our partners are, who our subcontractors are, and if there was a extreme amount of our funding that we've received going to those partners, that'd be kind of flagged in the evaluation process as well through the DE.
Perfect, thanks, Laura.
The sum total on this one is what?
It's about, we're doing through, it's about $15,000
That's what I thought.
for summer programming, where we're trying to increase the academic achievement of students that have been invited to participate in the summer program.
It's 375
I'll just add one
students.
other.
Sorry. 375 students in the summer program, for students from Twain, Wood, Kirkwood, Lucas, Alexander, and Mann. Sure, Amy.
And those enrichment opportunities are happening in the afternoon as well as on Fridays. During the morning time, Monday through Thursday, they are involved in about a 3-hour academic piece where we are hiring our own certified teachers to do that reading and math tutoring. So it's not absent from our own staff doing some of that.
All right, entertain a motion.
So I'm just curious, one more question. Is this, since it's grant funded with 21st Century funds, is this free to the families? I mean, is this in place of the summer program at those schools? Or is it in addition to?
So I think it's part of their before and after school programming in general. And so that the funding for those programs comes from a variety of places. The parent tuition, I believe Save Dollars are used for part of that. The Eli funds are used to support the teachers that I just spoke of in the morning. So there's a combination of ways that those programs are delivered. The grant itself.
Entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the fiscal year 17 contracts for summer program.
Second, further discussion. Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim. Number 10, Phil?
10, the 95% group. Who recommended this group?
I'm the one that's bringing the contract to you. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be me.
Okay.
Specific question?
That, I'm, let's see.
Would you like a little information on it?
Yes, please.
Sure. First of all, I do want you to know we do offer a lot of training to our staff using our own staff or using the Grantwood AEA. Those training opportunities I don't bring before the board because we don't have contracts for them to be signed. So the only ones I'm ever bringing to you are the ones that are going to cost us some money and where we're using some outside people. This is one where I think it's important that we do use some outside trainers. As you know, we assess all of our students, K-6, 3 times a year in reading, and then any student who's not proficient on those reading assessments has to receive an intervention. So we have begun using 95% group intervention materials, which are proven and evidence-based, and we used those last year, and we sent select teachers to trainings, I think in Davenport, where we were paying a registration fee and we were paying, of course, travel for those teachers. Because those materials have proven to be effective with our students, we wanted to expand the training for more teachers, and we could do it more in a more cost-effective manner by bringing the trainers here. We also want to make sure that we're using people who are trained to provide that professional development to our teachers so that we're using those intervention materials with fidelity and in the way that is going to get the most positive results for our students.
Yeah, Dan, it just reminds me of my Coralville Central visit when I had the best reading discussion ever, I think in an elementary school, and the 95 materials, it was materials we were talking, was a big part of that, and they just said, you know, the more the materials you get, the better, so seeing some of the professional development that goes along with it, I mean, just makes sense to me based on what I've seen across the district and who's using the 95% materials, so.
And we receive grant funding from the state, from the Early Literacy Intervention program that is specifically supposed to be used for materials for our teachers to use, professional development for our teachers. We're using that for the summer school program as well to pay our teachers to provide summer school to students in the morning. So it's directly in line with the goals of the state.
Entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the 95% Group Inc. contract.
Second. Further discussion? Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thanks, Kim. All right, on to agenda setting. First is the Education Committee next Tuesday. We are at our 3 agenda item limit. I think 3 great topics. Students Against Hate and Discrimination, our at-risk services, and NAVID. I think we're all excited. And we're doing that at Kirkwood because they're the lead model for the NAVID stuff, right? So it should be great. Can't wait. The 25th board meeting, we'll add the GO bond language.
Can we get, we've been hearing, and we saw something that came to us in the email about new agreements with the before and after school programs. And there've been some questions that people have asked me about as far as what those changes mean and why they're there. So if we could get some kind of brief discussion of that, I think it'd be helpful. I remember we had something like that about a year ago at this time. Or maybe it was a little bit earlier. I think it's just useful to know what's going on with that.
Do you understand that? Do you want it that board meeting, work session? Doesn't matter? Do you care, Chris? Or?
I go with board meeting because if anybody wants to come and talk about it, it's just going to be easier if they don't have to
Can
wait
always
around.
talk about it, but let's put it on the board meeting. Anything else for the 25th work session? Perhaps at the work session tonight we can talk whether we need to keep the facilities master plan on there, or we've kind of kept FMP and GO bond just as a placeholder, but there may be a time where we don't do it every single meeting.
At some point in time, and I need to talk with Matt a little bit, I guess, before, but I'd like to get a discussion on FFA curriculum and how we can make that opportunity available to our students. And just maybe as a placeholder.
Just for the public FFA.
Correct.
Just the acronym.
FFA.
Future Farmer Association, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just, in case people didn't know.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
So maybe you guys can talk and decide if that education committee in the next cycle or.
Well, right, and at the convention, there are a lot of enthusiastic people looking to help us and be a part of that discussion when we get to that point. But like I say, it's premature. I haven't had a chance to really talk with Matt about when's the best time to bring it in, but I just want it on the radar that we get it started as quick as we can.
Sounds good. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Move second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned. We'll start the work session immediately following at the back of the board meeting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.